Darrel, thank you so much for joining us today. As we start, can you talk a little bit about your current role and what's in your purview?
Sure thing, Nisha. My current role is I'm just coming off of a Senior Director of Technology and Cyber for Heartland AEA. And my current role is looking for a CISO position, right? Or a joint CIO CISO position. At Heartland, I was a consultant for a couple of years doing strategic work with the CIO and the board and had a series of recommendations. And then they said, we don't know how to do that. And unlike some of my compatriots, I'm not just a strategy guy, I'm an implementer and an ops guy. So I hired on and managed a 20-person team, brought up a cybersecurity MSP for school districts, adjusted our cybersecurity posture, updated our tech stack, got them started moving to the cloud, yada, yada, right? It was about the department had been doing the same thing for about 15 years. And as you may have noticed, the world is not standing still for 15 years. So they needed a kind of a jump start.
Certainly, I understand. So that kind of paints that's one point in the career arc, but can you give us a sense of how did you get into technology and cybersecurity? What were some of the earlier roles that you had?
Sure. Well, I got first into cybersecurity by doing some hacking because a long time ago, we used the timeshare system, and I had some friends at Bank of America. I worked at Chevron, and they said, you can't message back and forth. And I said, well, why? We're on the same system. And I figured out a way to do it. And I didn't get fired. I got a job offer to kind of as a side gig, maybe 4 hours a week, come and see if I could break things at the systems development level. So along with my business analyst and developer and project manager role, I got kind of a white hat hacker. I got early taste of it. I think I was 21 or 22. And then from then on, I kind of had a cybersecurity mindset, and everything I did, this is from the mid 80s on, nobody was talking about security. I mean, there were very lax controls, except for the big banks, like Bank of America was pretty solid, right? Chevron was pretty solid, but everybody else was struggling. They didn't have anything, and they were getting hacked even back then, early 90s, left and right. And every time I came in to a situation, I said, who's head of cybersecurity? And every single time the answer was, what? What do you mean? We have cameras at the door and badges. And I mean, you know, our computers are locked down. That's all we need. And it's not, right? And at each major place, I either was able to kind of do a groundswell of security actions, or in 2 cases, I was the boy crying wolf, and then they got hacked, and then they were a lot more willing to listen to put some money and budget and time into cyber, along with the application development support infrastructure type normal IT, SDLC, agile project program work, right? There's a missing piece for a long time. And I still think it is. I'm a bit of an evangelist to push cyber in at the beginning of every product scenario. Don't try to tack it on at the end. Same thing with quality, same thing with testing. You know, you want to bake these things into your regular process, not have vulnerabilities found in an audit.
Certainly, it's almost like if you build a product and cybersecurity is an afterthought that you try to spread as a thin layer on top of it, it usually doesn't work very well. But to your point, it's interesting that you mentioned that a few years ago, people were not as aware about cybersecurity and the implications as they are now, from the board level to employees. I think it's just a sign of how the world has changed and how much bigger of a footprint technology has in our lives at a personal level, at a family level, corporate, government, everything, like through the entire stack. And we're a lot more dependent on this technology, right? So if the system goes down, it could be critical infrastructure, it could be healthcare records, it could be government records, IRS, I mean, you name it. We're so dependent on systems being resilient, and this dependency is only increasing over time. It's not going down, and as a result, the prize, the money involved is a huge incentive for the bad guys on the other end of it to pursue some of those targets where before they were either non-existent or negligible. And I think as a result, as a little bit of a segue, a lot more people looking into cybersecurity as a career, whether someone who started in technology looking to switch, or maybe even earlier, more upstream of that, students in colleges, they're looking into space and thinking of something they can make life out of. From your vantage point and from your experience, what would be some of the advice you would give to the 25-year-old looking into space and figuring out what they should focus on to stack the deck in their favor a little bit?
Right. First of all, I think cybersecurity is a true calling. I think it's fun. And if you have a responsibility for something, it can be very stressful. It's normally not a 40-hour-a-week job, because as soon as something happens, it's all hands on deck. You're in the war room, including simulations and tests and disaster recovery and all those things, right? Mm-hmm. So first of all, you shouldn't get in it for the money. You should get in it because protecting people is in your heart, or it's just totally technically interesting, right? It's very, you'll never run out of a technical challenge. I'll tell you that. A lot of developers have gotten stuck in what they might consider a dead end job. There's no up from here, right? They're not going to be a manager. There's no secondary level. You got to quit and go work for a vendor or something if you want to increase your career. And cyber is not like that. It is a curve that's not stopping. And the hottest terms in tech, AI, machine learning, BPO, business process outsourcing, automation, all those terms are now being applied to cyber, right? So I think that is a really good step. If you're a kid in school, go, what should I do? It's going to be, if you're in technology, you have to know something about cybersecurity. It's not that way now, but it's going to be, because it's going to be like the old Ford slogan, quality's job one, quality's everybody's job. Well, cyber has to be everybody's job. And if you don't know about it, you're just going to spend your life being irritated by seemingly random requirements instead of driving that process and coming up with better ways. You know, I just listened to a podcast, Security Now, by a friend of mine, Steve Gibson. He's done like 900 of these, right? He's about ready to retire. He's sick of the whole thing, I think, right now. The SQL injection attacks that have been so prevalent were first identified in 1998. And nobody did anything about them. They were published and identified in 1998. And at two of my clients, I still had to push and escalate all the way up to the chief or the COO to plug those. They go, well, they've been there for years. Nobody's going to. Well, now there's automation. It used to be you only had to run faster than the bear, right? And if there was anybody that's slower than you, the bear would get them. Now there's an infinite number of bears, and they can run very, very fast with AI, and every single website that has any chance at all of providing a ransom or hurting our national security is going to be hit. That's the difference. Infinite number of bears.
Interesting. That's a very good way to put it. I haven't heard it before. I like it a lot. Well, and from that perspective, I think, to your point, it's the landscape is ever changing, ever evolving. Certain vulnerabilities get patched. New technology is getting adopted. It's getting exploited.
Right.
AI is coming on board. It's also being deployed by the bad guys. So there's never a shortage of things to worry about. From your perspective, what are the top 3-5 challenges facing cybersecurity executives? Well, and executives for that matter, because you work both on the operational side and the strategy side as well. What are some of top 3, top 5 challenges right now, as of today, that most important in your view that CISOs and CEOs are facing?
Right. So the single most important aspect, and it's a darn shame that it is user vulnerabilities. You can put all the back end, there's some darn good vendors out there now, I won't mention names, that provide protection in every conceivable technical slot that goes in with, you know, the cybersecurity and the technology infrastructure type people on your LAN, your network, your applications, whatever. All it takes is one user clicking on one wrong thing. And you can minimize the damage, right, by having VLANs and all sorts of ways to separate a zero trust environment. But all it takes is one guy, one woman flew back from Europe. They're dead tired, they're jet lagged, and they get a message from somebody. It looks real, and they click on one link. And they can get infected now just by clicking. They don't have to do anything once they get there, right? It used to be 3 stages. First, you got a phishing or some other piece. Then you had to click on it. Then you had to do something else, like input your social security number, and then they're off to the races. Now it's simply clicking, and there are programs that just by clicking on a link in your iPhone, you can become infected and you'll never know it. And it'll just sit there and keylog or do whatever. It's really scary. So the answer to basically every question that a user will ask is don't click. Go directly, call your credit card company, go to visa.com, go to the internal intranet site and get to something. Don't click on a form, don't click on an attachment, don't click on a link. And that is so hard because we've all developed, hey, send me a link, and you click and you're off doing whatever it is you need to do, right? But an email from you is not safe. An email from me is no longer safe because our internal emails can be spoofed.
Certainly. Well, that, and also I know there are some famous cases when attackers would register a misspelled domain. So if you daily go in through hundreds of emails, something and chase.com could be spelled a little bit differently, and you just don't notice, and you think it's from a bank or someone, even company. Like, so there are so many variations. I know Coca-Cola can be spelled so many different ways.
One tricky one I saw, a colleague sent me, Bank of America has a lot of A's in it. The second to last A was replaced with acrylic A that looks almost just, if you blew it up on your screen, you can tell the difference. But when you're just seeing, oh, that's a Bank of America, you hover over it, oh, it's Bank of America link, and you click, they're using other languages. I mean, people are darn clever, right? These guys are making millions of dollars. They can afford to hire the best programmers. It used to be the best programmers worked for the NSA and the porn and gambling sites, right? That was where the dollars went. That's where a programmer can make $1 million a year, not the NSA, but the others. Now it's bad actors can make $1 million, 10 million a year with about the same amount of work that somebody over here is making 100,000.
Yeah, it's scary.
So the talent without a conscience is drawn to that because it's big money and it's quick. It can be startlingly quick. You know, a month. One hacker told a story on a podcast. He said, I was pretty good, but I started in a month, I had my first $1 million.
Well, but every other day you see people get indicted, people get arrested, people go to jail for a very long time.
Yeah.
Their life ending. So it's not without, yes, it may be easy for some people without conscience, as you said, talent without conscience. It's, again, a really good expression. I will borrow. You should copyright it. I'll borrow it. But it's, you see sites being taken down, the marketplace is being shut down, people arrested when they decide to leave, I don't know, their home country and go on vacation. They get picked up and extradited to the US. So it's certainly, I think it's always a balance and equilibrium of sorts. So I think the enforcement activity is definitely has picked up because, to your point, the rewards for the bad guys are so huge, and but you see kind of major botnets being taken down. So it's not, I don't think they're just completely unchecked. So there are certain repercussions for them waiting for them on the other end. So
Right.
Hopefully.
One of my good friends is a retired special agent in charge of a cybersecurity region for the United States, a very populated region, very important region. And he says less than 1% of the bad guys ever spend a day in jail. 1%.
Really?
Or worldwide, right? Because what are we going to go to Russia to prosecute somebody? That's, I mean, 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, probably not. Now, no. Russia is not going to extradite anybody, and neither is China or North Korea or Iran or any of another 20 countries that are on sort of the naughty list, right?
For sure. And it's interesting that I follow Krebs on security. He publishes exposés once in a while, and people are still kind of driving red Ferraris and flaunting their wealth. He calls them out by name with all the details. It's kind of really does very good investigative journalism and researching, showing the history and tracking because they usually use the same handle or the same email to register different accounts. So he's really good. Brian Krebs is really good on kind of writing those exposés. But again, obviously, enforcement is waiting for them to slip up and travel to a third country or leave and go on vacation, and they'll get picked up. But a lot of them, to your point, probably staying put for the fear of being arrested. Yeah, but it's interesting. I never heard the statistic that only 1% of them spend any time in jail. I certainly thought it would be much higher than that.
Well, think about this. The nation states have tens of thousands of people employed, and nothing ever happens to them. Between the big five of our, to put it kindly, rivals, China, North Korea, Russia, a couple of the other Baltic states, Iran, a couple of the other Middle Eastern states, they have tens of thousands of people working on these things, and not a single one of them is ever going to be prosecuted in a US court. So just that, right? And they're the most powerful. They're funded. They have the best equipment. One of them has quantum computers to work with. Wait till that hits, right? And I'm not saying it's risk-free in America. It's not. And I wish that everybody that perpetrated that, they would run them down and put them away for good. But it's just, they move around too easily, and it's electronic now. So if I could do anything to aid law enforcement, I certainly would.
For sure. Well, you mentioned users. And that's probably kind of number one, to your point. You can upgrade your tech stack, but you not always can upgrade the user. So if they do something that they shouldn't be doing, there's only so much control you can have over them. But any other, in addition to that, I mentioned like top 3, what are some of the other top challenges that you think right now facing?
Just to button that up, it's training, right? It's training and individual attention and examples, and providing them with tool sets such as password managers. Instead of just saying, you got to make a long password you can't remember, you give them a tool in which to do it, right? Not a yellow sticky, but an alternative to what they used to do. And you can also make your internal systems work differently, so they don't have to continually go back and change passwords and do all kinds of things like that, right? So the second biggest problem, and I've written an article on this, and it's that the base of it is that a lot of CISOs are not equipped to talk and negotiate with the board, the CEO, the chairman, the president. They haven't had that training. The existing CISO job descriptions, I haven't done any data work on it, but I'm about to. Most of them require several cybersecurity certifications, right? So somebody that's been doing that, sitting in front of the single pane of glass and working through the LAN configurations and all those things, is probably not had the business and managerial training and prior experience to talk to the board and try to justify a budget. And because they're basing it on cyber, the people that ought to be CISOs are the people that can look at the entire organization, the whole business risk palette, and translate that back into acceptable risks and unacceptable risks, and then translate that back into cyber training, physical security, policy changes. It's a pretty rare cyber analyst that can write a good policy, right? They just haven't been trained to do that. They've been fiddling with networks and firewalls, and the job descriptions are just basing it on, do you need a super techie? Then you need somebody else to talk to the board. If you want a CISO that's going to have a seat at the table and get in front of these issues, it needs to be somebody, it needs to be a suit, right? Like me with an MBA that's had management positions, not a technician.
It needs to be someone, to your point, it needs to be someone who is technical and has business skills and have the understanding what the CEO's job is like and what the board's job is like. So someone who is capable of putting himself or herself in their shoes and understand what issues they're dealing with, so they can translate risk into probabilities and rank it and
Right.
explain, create almost a business case of what's acceptable, what's unacceptable, and how much it's going to cost, and where, because it's a range essentially, right? It's a range of probabilities. For certain attack vectors that are more likely to happen, and the exposure is that, and it will cost us that much. And there are reputational risks and the hard costs and remediation and things like this. And this is the range of outcomes. What are you comfortable with?
Right.
And basically, you're comfortable with, that's how much it's going to cost. So, which obviously it's not just technical knowledge that comes with certifications, but also analytical capacity, as well as communication skills and just understanding kind of the bigger picture business issues and business
Right.
agenda, which is actually interesting. I think it's changing because I know SAC is going to require, I think fairly soon, that there should be someone on the board with understanding of cybersecurity. I don't know what kind of form and shape it's going to take,
Right.
but understanding of importance of cybersecurity, I think it's becoming more to the forefront than back in the day, because I think it's just the issues the issues and the challenges are getting greater. And to that point, you mentioned some of the threats, some of the issues facing CISOs and CEOs now. Imagine you have a crystal ball and you can see into the future, 6 months from now, 12 months from now. What do you think? What are the 2 or 3 things everyone will be obsessing about in 1 year's time?
Well, it's been this way for a while, and it's getting more so. The ability of bad actors, let's call them bad actors, to use AI and do things. There's always been like password guessing programs that can be purchased, right? Now there's the whole ransomware as a service. We're starting to hear about that, where some of the bad guys have a whole environment based on extracting ransom, including encrypting all the files, and they just need you to get in, and then they sell you this package for somewhere between $200 and $5,000. And then you can use that. You don't have to have any expertise in it. It used to be a hacker had to have an extreme amount of expertise to do things once they get in. It never was that hard to get in. Somebody, a lucky teenager, right, which happened a lot, could get in. But now what, right? How are they going to deal with the 5 layers of technology and the 7 layers of networking? And they just don't know. But now there's programs to do that. And the wave of the automated attacks is, I think we're about 15% in.
Interesting.
It's not going to be someone in a hoodie, with all the icons, and it's not going to be that guy. It's going to be a business guy with $5,000 to spend on ransomware as a service, and able to hire a hacker to get in, and then they don't have to have expertise. They just have to have patience.
Interesting. It's interesting. I think we're already seeing that, because before you could tell, you'll get an email and it will be grammatical errors. You could tell that was written in, I don't know, but not to pick on any country, but in a country where English is not the first language, and you can tell the tone, or there was so many tells. There's so many different giveaways. But now with AI, I mean, you can train. It'll be perfect email that will completely pass everyone's smell test. So it's certainly scary. Darrel, I know we're coming up on time.
Sure.
And you mentioned you're looking for your new role. What's the best way for people to get in touch?
Sure. Well, my email, daRaynor@dataanalysis.com. LinkedIn, there's only one Darrel Raynor spelled that way on LinkedIn. So luckily, unless it's been hacked since the last time I checked, right? So that way's good. And, also phone, I take it you'll publish my contact information here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Darrel,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. This was very interesting. And again, you should copyright some of those expressions. Talent without conscience, I think, was really good. So it's certainly something. And never-ending shortage of bears who are chasing you. So you certainly
Well, maybe I will.
You certainly cannot rely on running faster than the other guy. You need to be running a lot faster than that. Again, thank you so much for your time. This was lots of fun. We should do it again sometime.
Absolutely, Misha. Just give me a call. Thanks.
Thank you.